Marissa Buchan is an oncology dietitian and COO at Savor Health, a digital health platform that provides cancer patients with personalized nutrition support and symptom management. Marissa worked at a cancer center for 10 years where she counseled patients and spearheaded nutrition research efforts. She has co-authored over 20 articles and has particular interest in the role of diet on the microbe. When Marissa isn't wearing her nutrition hat, you'll find her chasing around her two little boys or exploring her passion for delicious, mostly healthy food in the kitchen. So I'm going to turn it over to Marissa, and thanks so much for being here tonight.
Thank you for having me. Thanks so much. I'm very excited to be here. I'm also a Chicago native. I grew up in the northwest suburbs and lived in Chicago, and just recently moved to the suburbs myself for a little more space for those two toddlers that Lindsay mentioned. So great to be with you guys today. And so today I'm going to be tackling some hot topics in cancer nutrition, because nutrition information can be very confusing and at times misleading. One week you read that you should follow a keto diet. One week you're convinced that you should be a vegetarian, and then low fat, low carb, gluten-free, dairy-free. You get the picture. There's a lot of conflicting information. So it's really important to be skeptical when it comes to nutrition and to be informed when you make your nutrition decisions. So before I get into those myths, I'm going to just really quickly start by highlighting the importance of nutrition at various phases in the cancer journey. I'm sure you all know this. If you're here on this call, you clearly recognize that nutrition is really important, but it's important, at the three phases of treatment: before diagnosis and at diagnosis, during the treatment, and then even after the treatment into, long-term survivorship. So nutrition plays a key role in each of those phases, and food really is medicine. So it's really important to, work with your medical team, ask questions about nutrition along the way, work with a dietitian if you have access to one. So at diagnosis, 50% of patients are already experiencing some nutrition issues. And so this is a good time to get in touch with a dietitian and make sure you have, nutrition resources in place, and kind of start to learn and educate yourself on how you can use nutrition throughout your journey. And then during treatment, almost every patient, and I would say 100%, the statistics say 90%, but I would say almost 100% of patients have addressable nutrition symptoms during their treatment: nausea, fatigue, taste changes, mouth sores, you name it. Those are all going to impact how you make it through your treatment. And so learning strategies to mitigate those side effects are really going to help you have better quality of life and get through your treatment, stay on your treatment, and all of that. So during treatment, nutrition is an amazing tool. And then after treatment, and even for those that don't have cancer, nutrition is always an important, really critical thing for all people. And some of the things for cancer survivors particularly are to focus on plant-based foods, exercise, limiting processed and red meats, and achieving and maintaining a healthy body weight as much as possible. So those are just some of the things after treatment, but I just really wanted to highlight and encourage patients and caregivers to advocate to see a dietitian if it's available to you. So now we'll get into the myths part of the presentation. So I'm calling it healthy or hype. So nutrition information can be confusing. And there's a few things that I consider when I'm assessing nutrition information, and recommend that all of you do as well. So first of all, does it sound too good to be true? For example, is it a claim that says lose 20 pounds in 2 weeks or cure your cancer with food alone? These are big red flags. So is it too good to be true? And then the second question is it evidence-based? So where did the information come from? So you see a headline and it sounds awesome, but look in that article and see, did it come from a well-designed research study, or is it kind of personal opinion or an anecdote? Are there links to scientific journals in the articles you're reading? So always kind of look back at who and what the source are. So for nutrition information, it should be coming from trusted nutrition experts like dietitians, doctors, and not people who aren't qualified or certified in nutrition. When was it published? So is it recent, or is it from 20 years ago? What does your doctor and dietitian think? Always, run these things by your medical team. And then last but not least, are they trying to sell you something? So the diet and weight loss industry is a $80 billion industry, and it's tripled in the last 20 years. So it's important to think about, where's this information coming from? And, are these supplements or programs that they're trying to sell me? So now I'm going to get into some of the top myths that I am asked about, but it sounds like some of you on the call have questions of your own. We'll get to them at the end. I'm going to go through some of the top ones that I'm usually asked by patients, but keep in mind the other ones that you'd like to hear about. So I'll ask the question and you can kind of think about your answer in your head, and then I'll go through what the answer is. So first one is organic food is always healthier. So the answer to that one is it is a myth. Currently, there's no convincing evidence that shows a difference between organic and conventionally grown food related to cancer risk. Even on conventionally grown products, fruits and vegetables, the pesticide levels are very, very low and well below the safety tolerance level. But at the same time, wash up. Conventional wisdom says we shouldn't eat a ton of pesticides. If you're eating a lot of fruits and vegetables, that's a great thing. Just make sure you're washing them off. That's going to get some of the pesticide residues off. And if it's accessible and affordable to you, you can consider buying certain foods organic. And I'll tell you more about on the next slide how you might choose which ones to buy over others. At the same time, though, I don't think that you even need to do that. I'd rather you eat the fruits and vegetables in whatever form you're able to access them in. And then another note is that organic does not always mean healthy. So just because your cookies or your chips are organic doesn't really mean it's any different or any healthier than the non-organic cookies or chips. So the bottom line here is the advantages of eating a variety of produce strongly outweighs any risks from pesticides. You've probably heard of this before, the Dirty Dozen or the Clean 15. This is a list that the Environmental Working Group comes out with every year to kind of highlight certain foods that are the highest in pesticides versus other foods that are the lower in pesticides. So the Dirty Dozen are foods that typically have higher levels of pesticides, and the Clean 15 are foods that typically have lower. So if you are wanting to purchase organic foods, I would probably focus on those Dirty Dozen foods over the Clean 15 foods, and buy them when it's accessible, when it's affordable, but don't stress about it. Go for what looks the best and is the least expensive and what works for you. So that is the organic spiel. So the next one up is the one that someone mentioned at the beginning. So sugar feeds cancer, avoided at all costs. So think about your answer to this question. And then I will go through the answer. So this is also a myth. So our cells, every cell in the body, especially the brain, need glucose to function. So it's the preferred source of energy for brain and muscles. And our bodies, even if you don't feed it any glucose, our bodies will find other ways to create glucose through the metabolism of fats and protein. So it'll break down your protein, fat, and in some cases, the muscle that you don't want to lose to make that glucose for energy. So at the same time, there's something behind this. Like there's a reason people are talking about this. We know that diets high in sugar lead to higher blood sugar levels, which raises insulin levels, which kind of creates a pro-inflammatory state in the body. So if you're eating high sugar foods and a lot over time, that's going to create more of an inflammatory state in the body. So that is true. That being said, if you're eating, normal, moderate amounts of sugar, that isn't going to be an excessive inflammation in the body. We also know that higher sugar foods are often higher in calories, and over time, that's going to lead to excess weight, which is linked to the greater risk of several types of cancer. So the bottom line here is sugar alone does not promote cancer. And eating small amounts of sugar as part of a healthy diet is absolutely fine. And I think even, especially in cases where patients are having difficulty maintaining their weight during treatment or losing weight, I would even more so prioritize foods with some sugar in them to kind of aid in that weight maintenance. So outsmarting sugar. So all people should strive to limit added sugars and sugar sweetened beverages in the diet. So we don't want to have an excessive amount. We want to have, limited amounts of sugar-free sweetened beverages, but natural sugars like those found in fruits and vegetables are absolutely okay. And there's no reason to limit that. I get questions from people like, can I eat bananas? Are bananas too high in sugar? No, you can eat bananas. They are prepackaged with fiber, water, antioxidants, and nutrients, and all those things are incredibly beneficial in the body, even though you're getting some sugar from fruits. If you tend to have blood sugar spikes, or if you're diabetic, and all people, this is a good practice. I like to pair high carbohydrate foods with protein, fat, and fiber. So instead of just eating the piece of fruit, if you eat it along with a handful of nuts or, some Greek yogurt or something like that, that is going to help your blood sugar spike be less dramatic. So it'll be a little more level. And every time we can make our blood sugar spike more level, that means we're producing less insulin, and that those blood sugar spikes is what is pro-inflammatory. So basically, enjoy sweets in moderation. Don't stress over it. You can try healthy recipes that satisfy your sweet tooth. Some examples, people ask me this, if I'm not supposed to eat a lot of sugar, what can I eat instead? Greek yogurt with some dark chocolate on top, or frozen grapes. I'm going to share one recipe that I really enjoy as like a sweet tooth alternative. So these 4 ingredient cookies I really like to make. All you need are these 4 ingredients to make them: 2 overripe bananas, a cup of oats, a 1/4 cup of the nut butter that you like to use, and then a 1/4 cup of dark chocolate chips. And if you bake those for 350 degrees for about 12 minutes, you get some really nice cookies. So just highlighting this one recipe as an example of a whole food version of a dessert that you can try if you're trying to kind of cut back on those added sugars in your diet. And because it's almost dinner time, I figured, we'd get hungry by looking at a picture of cookies. So I'll get on to the next one. So I need supplements to stay healthy. Fact or myth? So that one is probably not, but it depends. So you can get the protective benefits linked to eating whole foods such as vegetables. You cannot get the protective benefits of eating fruits and vegetables from pills. It's just not the same. When you're isolating a substance, it's not exactly the same as when you're eating it in its natural form. If you're eating well and you don't have issues with absorption, you likely do not need supplements. That being said, some cancer patients do need certain supplements, and some, people before they have cancer need certain supplements, and that's something you should discuss with your medical team. Particularly if you've had any GI surgeries, those can impact your absorption of certain nutrients, particularly B12. A lot of B vitamins are kind of impacted sometimes with GI surgeries. Vitamin D is another one I'll mention, especially for cancer patients. You maybe have seen that there's a lot of research around vitamin D for immune function and for bone health, which is a challenge for a lot of people after cancer and during. So osteoporosis is actually the most common late effect of cancer treatment, and it occurs more frequently in cancer survivors than in the general population. So vitamin D is something that people should ask to be screened for if you haven't been already by your doctor. And if you're low, they might recommend a vitamin D supplement. And then B12 is something that vegans all need to include in the diet, since B12 is only naturally found in animal-based products, and also fortified products that are fortified with B12. So if for some reason unable to eat a healthy varied diet, you have incredibly low appetite, or you have restrictions to what you can eat for various reasons, maybe there are supplements that you need to be taking to make up for those losses, and that's something you should discuss with your doctor. So the bottom line is supplements cannot replace a varied and healthful diet. And you should always talk to your doctor before starting any new supplements, as some supplements can actually be harmful in your treatment. I know patients will ask me about antioxidant supplements, for example. There's certain types of cancer where that can actually be more harmful than helpful. It can kind of like work against your chemotherapy agent, for example. So things like that, you just want to ask your doctor before trying any new supplements. They're also not regulated by the FDA, so you don't know if what it says is in your supplement is actually in your supplement. So always talk to a doctor first. All right. The next one that I get asked about lately a lot is the ketogenic diet, and can it cure, prevent cancer? The answer is it's mostly a myth. So in case you haven't heard about the ketogenic diet, it's a very strict low carbohydrate diet. It's very high in fat, like 70 to 80% of your calories in a day are made up of fat. Is a lot compared to the typical recommendation of about 25 to 30% of calories. And so after about 3 to 4 days of eliminating carbohydrates, a process called ketosis starts in the body. This will use your body's stored fat for energy. And the thought is that it will starve cancer of energy. There's a few major issues with the ketogenic diet for cancer patients. And the first is that it usually results in weight loss due to all the restrictions. It's really, really restrictive. And it's not a good idea during treatment for the vast majority of people. And I'll talk about on the next slide when it might be used in a medical setting. Another big issue is that the ketones made by your liver can change the chemical balance of the blood and cause dehydration. And hydration is one of the most important things to focus on during cancer treatment. Some of the foods included in the ketogenic diet, like red meat, have been shown to actually increase the risk of certain types of cancers. So some people following a ketogenic diet, they're so limited in certain foods, they kind of have to eat things like red meat. And that's not something that we want to promote. And then on the flip side, it also eliminates foods that we know are healthy. So fruits, legumes like lentils, beans, many vegetables like, squash, sweet potatoes, things that we know are very healthy for the body, especially for people with cancer, are eliminated from a ketogenic diet. So you'll be missing out on a lot of the nutrients, antioxidants that occur in food if you're following a keto diet. So what is the evidence for the keto diet? It was originally used in epilepsy, and it was a kind of successful treatment for children with epilepsy. And some research has shown tumor growth slowing with ketogenic diet. There's some early evidence in human brain tumors, but other than that, it may be harmful for the reasons I mentioned on the previous slide. So it really should only be followed under close medical supervision and maybe, on a research study or something like that. There's some contradictory evidence out there. So studies have found that low-fat diets that are high in fruits and vegetables lower the risk of disease, which is kind of contradictory to a ketogenic diet. So the bottom line is there's just not enough human evidence to support cancer, and it actually could be dangerous to some. So a few others I wanted to mention, but I won't go into kind of details. So we have plenty of time for questions, is cleanses, juicing, detoxes. I don't know if you've, people promoting this, you've probably heard of that. This is not true at all. Our livers are designed to remove the toxins from the blood. So a week of drinking juice will not do this. Juicing also removes all the healthy fiber from fruits and vegetables. So it's much better to focus on whole foods and limit processed foods and added sugars instead. So if you're feeling like, your body needs a cleanse, just kind of really focus on whole food ingredients and limiting processed foods and added sugars, and you'll get the same effect. The second one here is superfoods. So you've probably seen lists of, 10 superfoods: kale, salmon, chia seeds. I think someone mentioned broccoli and cauliflower will often make that list. Broccoli and cauliflower, because somebody asked that at the beginning, does have some really amazing antioxidants in it that are cancer fighting for sure. as do all of these other fruits and vegetables that are part of a healthy diet. So variety is the most important thing. If you eat only broccoli or cauliflower, you'll be missing out on so many other things. So I'm not saying superfoods you should avoid. I'm saying that like all these lists probably have, foods that you should definitely include in your diet, but don't focus on only those foods. There are so many foods that have amazing anti-inflammatory benefits, and what I tell patients is go for as much color and variety as possible. Eat, a rainbow of colors, and you'll be getting the most benefits possible. Alkaline diet, this one's no also. You've probably heard about this too. Food actually really can't change the pH of the blood at all. Your blood is kept in a really tight range. And the concept behind it, if you've read about this, is that cancer grows best in an acidic environment. So if you eat a more alkaline diet, that will make it a less favorable environment for cancer growth. But like I said, the body really won't let the blood's pH change, even if you eat different foods. So that one is a myth. And then soy, people ask the question about soy a lot. I think even especially breast cancer patients are cognizant of that if they have, hormonal breast cancer, especially. So it is very safe, and it's actually helpful. So 1 to 2 servings per day does not increase cancer risk. And there's ample research that shows including soy products in the diet can actually reduce the risk of certain cancers and cancer recurrence. So I will say, though, that not all soy products are created equal. So processed soy foods like soy protein powders that are added to food are not the most healthful choices, whereas whole food unprocessed sources like tofu, soy milk, edamame, those are going to be better choices when you're choosing soy foods to include in the diet. And then the last one I included here is fasting. Some people are talking a lot about fasting, whether it be full days of fasting or intermittent fasting, which is often, a shorter period of eating during the day. It does improve some inflammatory markers, but it can also be risky for patients. In the same way that I mentioned with the ketogenic diet, patients may not get enough calories. You're ignoring your body's cues. It can lead to kind of overeating in the times when you are allowed to eat. So in general, I don't recommend it for patients that are in active treatment. If you are interested in trying it, I think the safest way to do it is what we call an extended overnight fast. So that's basically going like 12 to 14 hours without eating, which most of us do anyway. So let's, you stop eating at 7 p.m. and you don't eat the next morning till 7 or 8 a.m. That's going to give your body plenty of time for that metabolic rest period that people talk about as a benefit of intermittent fasting. So in conclusion, be a nutrition detective. Don't believe everything you hear and read, and always talk to your doctor or nurse or dietitian before making any dramatic changes or, reading an article and believing everything you read. Just kind of be skeptical about it. Do your research and ask an expert. So I'll also talk about really quickly the resource that Aina, it's called Aina, the Intelligent Nutrition Assistant. That's Savor Health's virtual dietitian that Lindsay mentioned at the beginning. So we partnered with Cancer Support Community and Gilda's Club to offer this free to all of the community. So this is basically a virtual dietitian. So for patients who don't have access to a dietitian, or maybe you do see a dietitian, but you have a question between your visits, then you can reach out to Aina and ask those questions and know that you're going to get evidence-based answers like the ones that I went over today. So I'll just tell you more about that. So Aina is personalized nutrition guidance available via text messaging. So if you sign up for Aina, you'll get text from Aina, you'll text her your questions. It's developed by a team of oncology dietitians, nurses, and doctors, and it relies on the scientific literature and clinical guidelines. So what it looks like is you go to a page like this. You can find it on Cancer Support Community Gilda Club website, and I'll also put it at the end of this presentation, and it's at the top here. You just enter your phone number, and then you are kind of signed up with Aina, and you can ask her your questions whenever you need help. So that is all I had prepared here. I have here the link to sign up for the program if you're interested. And I also have an email here. If there are questions that we don't have time to get to tonight, you can email them to this email address, and I'll get back to you.
And there's also a link to the Savor Health's website, directly to the portion on Aina, directly linked from Gilda Club Chicago's website as well.
Oh, perfect. Great. All
It's
right.
right on our homepage. So what questions do people have? Either feel free to take yourself off mute and ask, or write it in the chat, but I see Michelle has her hand up first.
So because of my vision loss, I have besides cancer, Marissa, and I don't have a smartphone. So can you still do this Aina without a smartphone?
So do you have any device that does texting? Can you do text messaging from your computer or your iPad?
No, it's just a regular computer. I don't see that well, and so that's why I don't.
No, I understand that. Yeah. So Aina is unfortunately only available through text message at this time.
Okay.
There are definitely
If my husband has a smartphone, is it he could ask my questions?
Yeah, absolutely. We definitely have a lot of caregivers on the platform that sign up on behalf of people that might not be using it themselves. So absolutely.
Okay.
Go ahead, Camille.
Hi, good evening. How are you today? I thought when I saw this program, I'm like, oh wow, now I'll finally get some good answers. But unfortunately, some of the things you said are in direct conflict to the things that my dietitian told me here at U of C. So there still is a lot of conflicting information as to what we should or shouldn't do. And I guess part of it might be dependent upon what kind of cancer we have, but I don't even know if that was a specific question of the information that I received. So there still is, it still is, like I said, there's still a lot of questions as to what we should or shouldn't do. And then you have your presentations for people who directly have cancer versus just maybe general health and well-being. So one of my questions to you is, you've talked a little bit about what to eat and not to eat, but what about how to eat? Portion control. You did mention, time of, go from 7 to 7. Are there other things in terms of how we eat that you'd like to share with us?
Yeah, so your question is a good one, or your comment that diet is very personalized and there's really not a one size fits all. So based on the type of cancer you have, or your particular size, shape, metabolism, preferences, allergies, context, all of that is going to impact what foods you should eat and not eat. So it's definitely not one size fits all, which is, I'm glad that you're working with a dietitian, because they'll be able to kind of get into those details of, what's your treatment, what's your cancer type, and any more nuances with what you should or shouldn't eat. So that's one. And then the question around how you should eat, unfortunately, there's not really like a one size fits all for this either, because portions, for example, is something you mentioned. The portions that are appropriate for one person versus another person are completely different. There's been a lot of research around whether it's better to eat 3 meals a day versus 6 small meals. And that's one that I get a lot. And actually most of the research, so small frequent meals are a great tool for people with certain symptoms. So if you're having fatigue, or you have difficulty digesting foods, or different GI issues, I might recommend small frequent meals. But actually the research for people who aren't having issues that require small frequent meals is that it kind of doesn't make a big difference. As long as you're eating regular balanced meals and snacks throughout the day, if you prefer a structure, that is, 3 larger meals and you tolerate that well and you maintain your weight well, there's actually not drastic health benefits versus, 6 meals a day. So that's another question I get a lot. Some people find it easier to get in the nutrition they need if they include kind of those smaller meals throughout the day. And that's a great strategy as well. So basically I answered your question by not answering your question, which is unfortunately the way it is a lot of the time in nutrition, because things are so individualized. What works best for people is what works in their lifestyle and for their particular situation. So, were there any other areas of, the how to eat topic that you were curious about?
Well, one thing is the trigger of when you're full. Is that a myth or is that a fact that you really don't get that trigger that you've had enough and that your body's satisfied until like 20 minutes after you stop eating, and that you should pause between, portion control. And personally, one of the things that happened with my treatments is I lost, and I can't even remember like what drugs I was on at the time. There's been so many, but I lost a lot of weight with some treatments. And then, basically the dietitian just told me to eat whatever I could put into my mouth because I was just losing. It didn't matter what it was, just put it in your mouth. And then another treatment, stabilized whatever those factors were. And then my weight kind of went back up a little bit. But I get a lot of questions. I get a lot of questions about how to eat. I just do, because of how I look and how I used to look, whether they saw me when I was really thin or whether they saw me when I was a little overweight. And, it's just, and then you talk about scientific data. I mean, there's been scientific data to support a lot of things that now people say are not correct. So it's, to me, it's still a very frustrating area.
It's frustrating and it changes. That's the thing, is as new research comes out, things do change. And that's, that's our job as dietitians and your doctor's job to kind of stay on top of those changes. On your question about hunger and satiety, fullness cues, it's true that if you eat very quickly, you may not realize that you're full. If you're eating slowly, and kind of pausing to reassess and eat mindfully, eating like mindful eating, I think is kind of related to this topic, like what you said, on taking breaks to assess your hunger and fullness, or, just being in tune with your body when you're eating, and taking your time is definitely helpful, but it does lag a bit. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem.
We do have a question in the chat as well. Anna, I will call on you next. I'm just gonna, so Marissa, can you see the chat question?
Let me take a look. Oh yeah, I can see it. So yes, this is maybe related to the cauliflower broccoli question we got before. So what do you think about sulforaphane, either from food or supplements? So this is a chemical that's made from cruciferous vegetables like broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts. And there is some good lab research and some human studies around people who eat more of these foods having lower risks of certain types of cancers. It's definitely a really powerful chemical that naturally exists in these foods. I would always prefer patients to eat these foods over taking the supplement. I don't think there's enough research to say that it's going to make an impact if you're just taking the supplement. That being said, eating those cruciferous vegetables is good for not only cancer, but also other chronic conditions, diabetes and heart disease. This is known, these are constantly coming up as one of the healthiest foods you can include in your diet. So I would recommend focusing on them from food. I don't think there's a need for a supplement unless you're unable to, eat those foods.
Thank you.
No problem.
Anna, did you have a question?
Yes, thank you so much. This has been really helpful. I have a question about preferring a plant-based diet. So, just from my background, I tend to have a lower weight, lose weight easily, and I also have a low B12 level. So I do take B12 supplements.
Mhm.
And I've sort of started trying to do a little bit more of a plant-based diet. Not a vegan diet at all, but I'm just curious because, I don't like fish so much, and I know that red meats aren't the greatest. So I'm sort of curious. The answer might just be a bit of a balance.
Mhm.
But just curious what your thoughts are on a plant-based diet and making sure that you get enough protein and enough of things that are easy to get from meats.
Yeah. That's a great question. I would say that there's not one, diet that's best for cancer patients or cancer survivors, but the ones that have the most research supporting them are the Mediterranean diet and plant-based diets. That being said, you don't need to eat an exclusively plant-based diet to reap the benefits. So anyone who's interested in including more plants in their diet should do that. You can get plenty of protein through a plant-based diet by including things like legumes, lentils, beans, chickpeas, all of those, by including nuts and seeds. So, any type of nuts, nut butter, sesame seeds, chia seeds, all have plant-based protein. And then also whole grains have a lot of plant-based protein. So rice, brown rice, whole grain pasta, things like that. So you're really going to get plenty of protein from a plant-based diet. Soy products also are going to be a great protein source, tofu, edamame, etc. Most people also overestimate the amount of protein that they need in a day. And people, for the vast majority that are eating normally, are getting plenty of protein from their diet. If you're undergoing active cancer treatment, you do have slightly higher needs than at baseline, just to kind of help your body with getting through treatment. So I encourage people to do their best to include more plant-based foods, but at the same time, you have to do what fits in with your lifestyle, your culture, your preferences. You don't have to exclusively eat vegan or vegetarian. It's okay to include, protein, animal protein as well. It's kind of about that balance and, what's filling up the most of your plate.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Looks like we have some questions in the chat.
Yes. Okay, what's the first one? So
the one about a dietary supplement.
Pectosol.
Yes.
Yes. So Pectosol is I've heard of it. I don't know a ton. I think it's claimed to benefit the immune system, if I'm remembering correctly, and also kind of healthy aging. So this would fall into the list of find out what's in it. Talk to your doctor about if any of this is competing with any of your other medications. So you really have to look at what your medications are and if it's going to be appropriate for you. I would have to look up what is exactly in these capsules, which I can do really quick and tell you what I think of it. But I'm definitely not an expert about that particular supplement. And then the other one we have here, so mindful is a good challenge if I'm craving a steak or specific veg, I guess. Yes, I think this person was just kind of reflecting on how challenging it can be to maintain good nutrition, and cravings, I think, are something that to some extent we need to honor, because if you deny a craving for long enough, you're gonna overdo it in the end. So it's okay to kind of include those foods you crave in moderation in the diet. And like I said, it's what you do most of the time that matters the most in terms of your health outcomes. So don't completely deny a craving or completely cut out a food group that you think is not healthy for you. You can have small amounts of it. And then they also mentioned in this comment about drinking enough water. It's a constant battle, is very true. It's very hard to stay hydrated, especially during treatment when your hydration needs increased. I recommend carrying around a water bottle with you, and some people can actually get those ones that hold, however many glasses you need in a day. And if you're really having trouble with hydration, put a timer on your phone that has an alarm every hour and just reminds you to drink, half a cup of water. To keep you hydrated throughout the day.
I'm going to go ahead and pause and end our recording.